Hello and welcome. You've just stepped into the Ghostlines where whispers become screams and the past never stays buried. Tonight, I invite you to turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and listen closely. Because what you're about to hear is not just a tale, it's a warning. On this episode of the Ghostlines, we dive deep into the story of the red shoe of the killer, a cursed evidence that never stopped bleeding. It began as a sealed evidence box, forgotten in the back of a police archive. Inside it, a single, child-sized red shoe stained with something far darker than time. Every officer who handled it met a violent, unnatural end, but no one could explain how or why. Until one night, the shoe disappeared. What you're about to hear is pieced together from old reports, forbidden logs, and one surviving witness who has never spoken again. Are you ready to walk the bloodstained path of the cursed red shoe? Let's begin, right here, on the Ghostlines. The evidence room had always carried a smell, a thick, heavy blend of mildew, gunpowder, old leather, and something metallic, like dried blood. But on that rainy Thursday evening, Officer Lena Cruz noticed something new. It was the smell of rot. She paused just inside the steel door of the precinct's lower-level evidence locker. Rows upon rows of shelves stretched into dim fluorescent light, each one packed with bags, boxes, and crates labeled in faded black marker. But the stench wasn't coming from anything she'd cataloged before. It came from the back, from locker 391. No one used that locker anymore. Not since 1997, when the infamous red shoe case was sealed and filed away for good. Everyone at the station knew the story, though no one liked to talk about it. Some even refused to touch the file. They said it was cursed. Lena always thought that was just exaggerated cop lore passed down to rookies for a scare. But the smell tonight? That wasn't a story. She followed it like a hound dog, her boots echoing across the concrete floor. With every step closer to locker 391, the air thickened. Her nose wrinkled. The scent was stronger than ever, pungent, sour like decaying meat. She gagged and covered her mouth with her sleeve. Then she stopped. Locker 391 stood ajar. She hadn't opened it. No one had. There was no record in the logbook, and this locker had a double lock protocol. Only the chief and the evidence sergeant had the keys. Lena reached for her flashlight, clicked it on, and pulled the locker open a few inches wider. Inside, a single item sat under plastic. A red, patent leather high-heeled shoe. Left foot, size 6. Its gloss had dulled with time, and something dark was smeared along the sole. Blood, maybe? Or something worse. But what truly made Lena's heart begin to thump violently was what lay beside the shoe. Finger bones, small, brittle, arranged neatly as if someone had placed them there like a warning, or a gift. Her flashlight flickered, then the lights in the entire evidence room went out. Pitch black swallowed her. The silence was absolute, until it wasn't. A tap, another. Then, the slow, unmistakable sound of a heel scraping against the concrete floor. Lena froze, breath held, listening. Click, scrub, click, scrub, coming closer. She pulled her sidearm. "Who's there?" Her voice echoed back, small and shaky. No answer. The temperature dropped sharply. She could see her breath. Her hand trembled and she pressed her back against a cold metal shelf. Flashlight beam darting, searching. Then she saw it, just for a second. A figure standing in the aisle. No face, just the silhouette of a woman in a torn red dress. On her left foot, a single gleaming red heel. And then, nothing. The lights flicked back on. The locker door was closed again. No footprints. No figure. The shoe remained behind glass, untouched. Lena backed out of the room without another word. Later that night, she sat at her kitchen table, flipping through the old red shoe case file. one of the last remaining physical records. A photo, paperclipped to the front, showed the shoe, newer, pristine, resting in a puddle of blood next to a dismembered leg. The victim had never been identified. The shoe, however, became infamous after 3 different officers who handled it died within weeks. 2 suicides, 1 vanished without a trace. Chief Moreno was the last one to lock it away. He left the force soon after. Now, nearly 30 years later, Lena had touched it. She rubbed her temples, exhausted, but her body wouldn't let her rest. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw red. A hallway soaked in blood. A woman's distorted scream echoing down a long corridor. The same clicking footsteps, always approaching, never arriving. Around 3:00 a.m., her phone rang. No number. She answered. Silence on the other end. Then, click, scrap, click. Scrappy, Lena screamed and threw her phone across the room. The next morning, Officer Lena Cruz didn't show up for duty. A patrol was sent to her apartment. They found her inside, alive but unresponsive, curled into the corner of her bedroom, rocking and whispering the same phrase over and over. She's walking again. She found her shoe. She's walking again. She found her shoe. On the nightstand, a single red heel. Not the one from the evidence locker. A matching right shoe. Pristine. Polished. Still warm. Rain hammered the hospital windows as Detective Jonas Hale stared down at the file on his lap. The pages had yellowed with time, edges curled like old leaves. But the photo clipped to the front still bled red. A woman's severed foot, clad in a glossy red high heel. Red Shoe Jane, the case file called her. No ID, no fingerprints, nothing. Just the leg, the shoe, and the screams of officers who handled it. And now, Officer Lena Cruz. He'd seen her that morning, curled in the corner of her apartment like a discarded doll, eyes hollow, hair matted, whispering nonsense over and over. She's walking again. She found her shoe. Jonas shut the file. He'd never believed in cursed objects, not really, but he also couldn't ignore what was sitting in the evidence bag on the table in front of him. The matching right shoe. Size 6, red patent leather, impossibly well preserved. It had been found next to Lena's bed. She lived alone, no signs of forced entry. The shoe had tested clean, no blood, no DNA. Yet Lena was broken, mind frayed like a marionette's strings snapped at once. There was something else. The shoe was warm, not like room temperature, body heat warm. 3 days earlier, Lena had signed into the evidence locker at 8:14 p.m. She'd never signed out. The logs simply ended there. No one had checked locker 391 since, not even the chief. Jonas had a sinking feeling he'd be the one to open it next. Midnight. Precinct 9. Evidence room. Jonas keyed in the security code and stepped inside. The moment he crossed the threshold, the same smell hit him. Rot. But not fresh. Aged decay. Like meat left in the sun and then frozen in time. His flashlight buzzed as he walked deeper into the maze of lockers and shelves. As he passed locker 207, he paused. Someone had scratched into the metal. She needs both. He blinked. It hadn't been there before, not when he logged evidence yesterday. Jonas moved forward, pulse in his throat, until he reached locker 391. It stood closed, but as he approached, he noticed something new. Dust patterns. Every locker in the room was covered in a fine layer of undisturbed dust, except this one. Faint lines were brushed away on the handle, like fingers had recently gripped it. He opened it slowly. Inside sat the original left shoe, but the finger bones were gone. In their place, something else. A toe. Fresh, pink, human, still bleeding. Jonas stumbled backward, bile rising in his throat. The toe was positioned like an offering, resting gently inside the shoe. His flashlight flickered. And then the power went out. Again. Click. Scrappy. Click. Scrappy. His heart stopped. Same sound Lena had described, coming from behind him. Jonas turned, drawing his weapon. Show yourself! The flashlight died completely. Darkness swallowed him. He felt breath, not his, brush against his cheek, then a whisper right into his ear. She just wants to dance. The light snapped back on. Locker 391 was closed. The toe was gone. Jonas checked the time. Only 5 minutes had passed, but it felt like an hour. Later that night, Jonas's apartment. He poured himself 3 fingers of whiskey and turned on every single light in his home. He hadn't believed it. Not really. But something in that room had touched him, spoken to him. He laid both shoes out on his coffee table, the left one from the locker, the right one from Lena's bedroom, side by side. A perfect pair. As he stared at them, a pressure built behind his eyes. Then a thought formed in his mind. Not his. Not really. Put them together. His hand moved without his permission. Fingers trembling, he rotated the shoes so they pointed in the same direction, like they were about to take a step. Then he heard it. Click. A real heel clicking against tile. He looked up. No one was there. He turned back to the shoes. They were gone. Jonas leapt to his feet. Click, click, click. The sound was moving toward the hallway. He grabbed his gun and flashlight, heart slamming against his ribs. He followed the noise down the hallway of his apartment. Nothing. Then he saw it. A wet, red footprint. Small, barefoot, leading into the bedroom. He followed it. The door creaked open slowly. Inside, the air was freezing. Standing in the center of the room was a figure. Female, tall, back turned, both red heels on her feet. Blood dripped down her calves. The lights flickered again, and in the brief strobe of brightness, Jonas saw her head turn, too far, like a doll's. Her neck twisted with an unnatural crack. She smiled. No lips, just bloodied gums and gleaming teeth. Then she was gone, just like that. The next morning, Jonas called the precinct. He didn't resign, but he didn't go back either. He took a leave of absence and locked both shoes in a steel box, buried them beneath the floorboards of his father's old cabin 2 counties away. But sometimes, late at night, he hears music playing downstairs, an old waltz, soft, scratched like an ancient record. And above it, click, click, scrape, like someone in high heels dancing with a limp. And he knows. She found her shoes. Now she's looking for her legs. It began with the smell. Not strong at first, just a whisper of iron in the morning air, like an old penny pressed against the tongue. Jonas Hale woke in a sweat. His shirt clung to him like wet gauze. The cabin windows had fogged, the thermometer outside frozen solid even though it was late spring. And the music. It wasn't a dream. He had left the old radio unplugged, buried under a tarp in the attic. But now, downstairs, that same waltz hummed softly. Scratchy, skipping, like it had been spinning all night. He stepped onto the cold wooden floor and moved cautiously toward the staircase. The closer he got to the living room, the stronger the smell became. Blood and perfume. Cheap, floral, cloying, like something a corpse would wear to a funeral. When he reached the bottom step, the music stopped, and in the silence, something creaked. Floorboards. 2 clicks, then a scrape. Like a limp. Like someone wearing red heels. The steel box was gone. Jonas stared at the floorboards in disbelief. He had sealed it himself. 6-inch nails, 3 padlocks, a cross taped to the underside even though he hadn't been religious since his wife died. But now, the wood was torn open. Shards littered the room like bone fragments. And in their place, bloody footprints, leading outside. 1 left heel, 1 barefoot. She was walking. Again. Same day, 34 miles away. Old Highway 12. A woman named Clara Thompson pulled her car over when she saw the figure in the road. It was raining hard. Lightning stitched the sky open in flashes, revealing a tall, elegant woman standing dead center on the wet asphalt. Soaked, unmoving. 1 red heel on her right foot, the other leg bare, ending mid-shin. Clara rolled down the window. "Ma'am, are you hurt?" The woman didn't answer. Clara turned off her hazards and stepped out with an umbrella. "Do you need help? There's a gas station 5 minutes up the..." Click, scrape, click. Clara's umbrella flipped inside out as a gust of wind howled past. And then, the woman was in front of her, close enough to kiss, mouth wide open, not in pain, not asking for help, screaming, but there was no sound, only the roar of wind. Clara never made it to the gas station. All they found was her car, and 1 red heel. Size 6, still warm, back at the cabin, nightfall. Jonas hadn't left the property in 48 hours. He kept his weapon on him at all times now, but he knew bullets wouldn't matter. Whatever had crawled out of that locker, whatever had danced into Lena's room, then his own, it didn't belong to the rules of this world. It followed different music, and it was playing louder now. He could hear it in his bones. 3 days since the shoes were reunited. 2 sightings confirmed. That meant she had both feet now, but she was missing something. He wasn't sure what, until he found the mirror. It was nailed face down behind the bedroom wall. He discovered it when patching the board she'd torn open. It was old, cracked, and humming. Yes, humming, like it had caught the tail end of a song no one else could hear. When he flipped it over, his own reflection didn't greet him. Instead, it showed a dim, foggy ballroom. Empty. Except for one thing. Her. She was dancing. Alone, slow, beautiful, and then she stopped. Her head snapped toward the mirror as if she saw him. Then she smiled. A wet, red smile. Jonas threw a blanket over the mirror and bolted it shut. But the music wouldn't stop. Not anymore. It followed him into sleep, laced his dreams with broken ankles, the snap of bones bending wrong, the shriek of heels across concrete, and always, always her. Same night, 1:13 a.m. outside the cabin. Something knocked on the door. 3 slow taps. Not fists, knuckles. He didn't answer. He stayed in the kitchen, holding the shotgun tight, heart thudding so hard he thought it would crack his ribs. Then came the voice. Sweet, gentle, like his mother used to sound long ago. Jonas. No one should know he was here. No one should know his name. He held his breath. The voice again, closer this time. I've been waiting for this dance. A shadow passed the kitchen window. She was inside. He ran for the car, abandoning the shotgun, the mirror, the cabin. He didn't stop until he hit the nearest town. He tried to explain to a bartender, to the gas station clerk, to anyone who would listen. But they looked at him like he was crazy. He probably was. Yet when he went to the bathroom at the gas station, the mirror above the sink wasn't his reflection. It was the ballroom again. And this time, she wasn't alone. He was there, in a tuxedo, dancing with her, his eyes gouged out, his mouth stitched into a smile. He broke the mirror. But when he looked into the shards scattered on the floor, the scene continued. She was still dancing, dragging him, step by broken step, blood in her footprints. Somewhere far away, an abandoned precinct basement. In a dusty back room, a little girl wandered into the dark. She had followed the music. A waltz, beautiful and sad. She opened a cabinet where a pair of shoes waited. Red, perfect, her size. She slipped them on, and then, click, click, scrape. Her mother found her body the next morning, eyes rolled back, face frozen in a smile, one leg twisted in a direction no child's leg should ever bend. And the shoes, gone. The shoe sat beneath a glass dome in the precinct's evidence room, red as dried blood, casting its macabre aura over everything near it. Sergeant Elise Navarro had seen death, gruesome, unjust, unnatural, but nothing prepared her for how alive that shoe felt. Not metaphorically, alive in the twitching, breathing, watching way. Ever since Officer Merrick vanished after his brief encounter with the red shoe, the department had avoided it like a cursed relic. The room was now padlocked, entries logged, surveillance placed, yet every morning the shoe appeared in a slightly different position under the glass. And sometimes, footprints led out of the dome. The night Elise decided to break protocol, she came alone, armed with a crucifix, a small vial of holy water she'd borrowed from the church where Merrick's mother prayed, and an old crime scene file. It had arrived anonymously that morning, slipped into her inbox in a manila folder marked, "Do not open, you will die." Of course she opened it. Inside were photographs from 1973, black and white crime scene shots of a string of murders in an abandoned shoe factory in Albany. Each victim had one foot missing. The bodies were slashed, faces contorted in unnatural agony. And in the corner of each photo, the same red shoe, always the left. At 2:14 a.m., Elise unlocked the evidence room. She moved with deliberate steps, her flashlight beam flickering. The lights above refused to turn on. A low humming filled the air, like power lines singing in the pain. The shoe waited, upright now, no longer resting at a tilt like before. She approached the glass case slowly. Her breath fogged the dome, though the room was cold as a morgue. Reaching into her jacket, she removed a laminated page. A printout of a death certificate. Isabel Merrow. Born 1950. Died 1973. Cause of death: multiple incised wounds, 1 foot missing. Elise placed the document on the table, staring at the shoe. And then, a soft creak. She whipped around. No one. But the door was now slightly open, even though she'd locked it from the inside. "I just want the truth," she whispered to the shoe. Click. The dome popped upward, on its own. Elise jumped back, nearly knocking over a filing cabinet. And then the smell hit her, coppery, moldy, like wet fabric left to rot in a storm drain. A scent of blood, old leather, and something fouler. She took a trembling step forward. The shoe stood proud, defiant, beckoning. Her flashlight flickered and died. The emergency lighting gave the room a deep red hue, like the shoe's color. Elise unscrewed the vial of holy water and splashed a few drops onto the table. The shoe hissed. It hissed. The floor vibrated gently, then stronger. Elise grabbed the table to steady herself. Filing cabinets began to rattle. The shoe twitched. Not figuratively, the toe curled. "Hell no," Elise muttered. She turned to run, but the door was now gone. Not locked. Gone. In its place stood a wall of red velvet curtain, gently swaying. Behind her, the glass dome clattered to the floor and shattered. The shoe rolled off the table and landed upright. Its sole peeled open slightly, revealing a mouth. Rows of tiny teeth glistened inside. From inside the shoe, a voice moaned, "I want it back." "What?" Elise whispered, hand trembling toward her gun. But she already knew what it wanted. The death certificate. The one she'd printed from a file that didn't exist anymore. The one she'd pieced together from whispers and archives, from janitors who remembered screams and priests who no longer took confessions. The red shoe wasn't an object. It was a vessel. The curtain rustled again. Someone stepped through. She saw a shadow first. A one-legged woman with blood trailing from her ankle. Her face was blank. Literally blank. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. But her hand pointed toward the shoe. "Isabel," Elise said. The figure nodded, slow and jerky. Elise held out the laminated paper. The figure stepped closer. Closer. The temperature dropped. Elise's breath turned to vapor. When Isabel touched the document, her form shimmered like smoke, sucked inward into the red shoe. The shoe screamed. A shriek so high-pitched Elise dropped to her knees, hands over her ears, blood trickling down her cheek from her eardrums. Then, silence. When she woke, the dome was intact. The shoe rested again, quiet, tilted to the left. The laminated paper was gone. So was the velvet curtain. The door was back, slightly ajar. As she stumbled out, she noticed something. On the right side of the dome, a new shoe sat beside the red one. Smaller, black. A child's shoe. And Elise realized the curse wasn't broken. It was multiplying. Detective Elise Navarro sat motionless in her car across from the precinct. Her knuckles were white around the steering wheel, and she hadn't blinked in over a minute. 2 shoes. Not one. The red woman's heel, and now, a black child's Mary Jane. That wasn't just an escalation, it was a message. Someone or something was collecting. Back at the station, Elise requested a full internal inventory of the evidence room. She ordered it sealed. Again. This time not with a key, but with blessed chalk markings around the doorway. A hasty tip from a retired homicide cop who once worked in New Orleans. "Don't just block it with locks, Navarro," he had told her over a scratchy late-night phone call. "That thing you got? You don't care about metal or wood. You need faith, blood, and names." Names. That word stuck with her like a shard of glass in the mind. 3 hours later, she was back in the archives, hunting through cold cases. Murders with amputations. Strange footwear. Unresolved child disappearances. One folder caught her eye. Case Namstroy A1973. No name. Just the collector's closet. She opened it. Inside were 3 photos yellowed with time. A boy, aged 6, missing 1 foot, smiling in a school photo with a bright red balloon tied to his wrist. A little girl, aged 8, found dead in an attic closet, both feet removed. No blood, no signs of struggle. A black Mary Jane shoe left beside her. A shoe store fire in 1971. All bodies burned except one, a single perfectly preserved foot, still in a patent leather shoe. The file had no official report, only one note, written in looping cursive on the inside of the folder. He collects what he's missing. Elise leaned back, staring at the phrase. Who was he? She Googled what she could. Nothing under police records, but when she searched forums, dark ones, conspiracy-laced threads frequented by paranormal enthusiasts, she found him. Or at least stories about him. They called him the Cobbler. A ghost? A demon? A vengeful spirit? No one agreed. But all stories pointed to the same traits. Appears after a cursed shoe is unsealed. Demands a name. Leaves behind a shoe when he takes a victim. And he never stops at one. That night, Elise returned home but couldn't sleep. So she opened her grandmother's old Bible. Not for prayer, for history. Her grandmother had survived a house fire in 1952. The only thing left intact was her left shoe. As a child, Elise had always thought that story was strange. Why just the shoe? The same shoe was in her closet even now. She retrieved it and froze. It was red, not quite like the one in evidence, but eerily close. Inside the sole, something was written in faded ink. Return what was stolen. Elise barely made it back to the precinct before dawn. She broke protocol again and entered the evidence room. Both shoes were still there, red and black, sitting peacefully. Too peacefully. But something had changed. On the floor, etched in scratches Elise swore weren't there before, were words, "I need a pair." Her heart thundered. She knew then the shoes were incomplete. Until he had both from the same person, the curse would grow, duplicate, spread. The cobbler wasn't just collecting for himself. He was rebuilding something. A body? A shrine? A ritual? She didn't know. But she had to stop it. Elise left the precinct and drove to the only place that still terrified her after all these years. Her childhood home. She hadn't been back since her mother died in that mysterious fall down the stairs when Elise was 13. But she remembered something odd. Her mother had a locked closet in the hallway. One Elise was never allowed to open. The house stood vacant, dusty, quiet. But the closet was still there, its lock untouched. Elise broke it open. Inside were rows of shoes. Dozens of them, all mismatched, lefts only. High heels, children's sneakers, boots, loafers, every kind. All aged. Some moldy, some covered in ash. And behind them, drawn in chalk on the closet wall, was a symbol. The same symbol Elise had seen in the cobbler threads online. A crude sketch of a foot with a missing heel and a stitched X over it. At the base of the closet, buried under rags, she found something else. A journal. Her mother's. She opened it with trembling fingers. Pages were filled with notes about nightmares. A voice that visited her at night. Shoes that cried. A promise made to him long ago. One entry stood out. I gave him my left foot in the dream. In return, he said he'd spare my child. But he lied. I hear him walking at night, dragging the other foot. He's coming. I failed. Elise dropped the journal. The temperature dropped instantly. The floorboards creaked. A whisper echoed behind her. You're next. Elise spun around at the whisper, heart pounding, adrenaline spiking so hard she nearly blacked out. No one was there, but the air in her childhood hallway had thickened, like walking through molasses and static. The kind of stillness that made even the walls seem to breathe. The open closet behind her creaked as if something unseen shifted. She clutched her flashlight tighter, sweeping its narrow beam across the shoes again. The left ones. Every single one. Suddenly the pattern clicked. He only took the left. Not just any pair. Not just any victim. He took what he didn't have. Elise backed out of the closet and forced the door shut behind her, locking it again. Not that she believed that would hold him, but it gave her the illusion of time, and right now, that illusion was the only thing between her and panic. She dropped into the dusty hallway, flipping the journal open once more, scanning for anything that hinted at a way to stop him. Page after page, her mother had chronicled dreams, strange sounds, shoes appearing where they didn't belong, missing pets, missing people. Then she found it. He comes from the imprint left behind. Not the foot, but the absence of it. That's where he lives. You cannot kill what does not exist, but you can bind him if you give him back what he wants most. Elise whispered the words aloud. Give him back what he wants most. But what did he want? The pair, a full collection, or something taken long ago? Back at the precinct, Elise pulled up every death related to her family. Her mother, her grandmother, 2 aunts, and a cousin died at age 6 in a lake accident. Body recovered, left foot missing, ruled as predation by fish or decay. But now, she wasn't so sure. She ran the victim photos side by side. Each one had something in common: the left foot missing, and the right shoe left behind. Like a token, a marker. The cobbler didn't just kill, he traded. She remembered something from the cobbler threads. A chilling line buried in a decades-old urban legend post. He cannot take what's whole. He must first unpair it. Unpair it. That explained why the shoes appeared, why they came before the deaths. They marked the next target. And right now, she had 2 shoes in evidence, unpaired, unclaimed. If she didn't act, 2 more would die, but if she tried to destroy them... She thought of the officer who vanished, the accident, the blood-soaked heel. You couldn't destroy a cursed object like this without consequences. You had to reverse the bond. She needed help, real help. And there was only one person she could think of: Father Mateo. An exorcist turned private investigator who'd gone underground after a failed Vatican mission in 2003. Some said he was insane. Others said he saw too much. Elise tracked him to a decaying church outside of town. The sign read, "See Agnes, condemned, do not enter." Perfect. She entered. Inside, Father Mateo was lighting candles. His face was half shadowed by the flickering flames, beard long, robes tattered. He didn't even look up. "You found the shoes, didn't you?" Elise froze. "How do you know?" "I dreamed of them last night," he said, turning. "Red and black, left and right. He's building himself again." "Who?" Mateo walked to the altar, lifted a trap door. Below, a box filled with left shoes. Hundreds. Some rotted, some new. All cursed. "I've been collecting the ones I could find before he does," he said. "But now he's started again. You opened the vault, didn't you?" Elise swallowed. "It wasn't me. It was already open when I got the case." Mateo's eyes narrowed. "Then someone's feeding him." Back at the precinct that night, Elise couldn't stop glancing at her own feet. She was still wearing boots, both intact, both paired. But now, that felt dangerous. Too complete. Like an offering. So she took off her left boot and placed it in a drawer, walking awkwardly in one shoe, trying to break the pattern to send a message. "I am not whole, not a pair. Don't take me." But she had a sinking feeling it was too late. Her phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. "Nice try, but I already have your name." Her breath caught. The text was followed by a photo. A snapshot of her as a child, standing on a beach, holding a red shoe. Only one. The next morning, Elise returned to the evidence room. She was prepared to remove the shoes, to destroy them if necessary. But they were gone. In their place was a single item. A child's drawing, crayoned in red and black. A stick-figure man with no feet, surrounded by left shoes, and one caption, written in a childish scrawl, "When I get mine, you lose yours." She turned the drawing over. A single name was scribbled in the corner. Elise Navarro. Elise couldn't stop shaking. The drawing slipped from her fingers, fluttering to the cold floor of the evidence room like a dying moth. Her name, written in red crayon. Her childhood face in the photo. Her bare foot, standing in the sand, holding a single red shoe. The cobbler hadn't chosen her recently. He'd marked her long ago, and now he was coming to collect. She rushed back to her desk, flipping through the crime scene logs from years past. Beach vacations, family photos, anything that could explain that photo because she didn't remember it. But there it was, filed under an old missing person report. Her cousin, Gabrielle Navarro, 6 years old, last seen playing on the beach in Pacifica. Elise was with her. The official story said Gabrielle had wandered into the ocean and drowned. Elise had been too young to give useful testimony. But in the archived folder, Elise found something no one had mentioned to her since: a single red shoe. Left side, found washed up 2 days later. Gabrielle was never found. She stared at the red shoe in the evidence photo, heart hammering. It matched the one now missing from her department's locker. Same wear, same blood-like stain on the inner heel. It wasn't a coincidence. The cobbler had taken her cousin and had marked Elise ever since. Her mother's warnings in the journal weren't just paranoia, they were desperate protection. Elise met Father Matteo again that evening. They sat in the sanctuary of St. Agnes, lit only by dozens of trembling candles. She laid the old photo and the drawing between them. "I was marked when I was a child," she said. "He took Gabrielle. I was supposed to go too." Matteo nodded grimly. "But you didn't. Because your mother did something. She kept all the left shoes. She bound him," Matteo said. "A crude warding. Not permanent, but it slowed him. He's only strong when he's remembered. You forgot. So he grew restless. Now that I remember, he's almost whole." Matteo reached into a locked chest near the altar and pulled out a mirror. Not just any mirror. A shard, broken at the edges, framed with what looked like old lace and bone. It pulsed faintly, like a beating heart. "This is from the old convent in Spain," he said. "One of the last places that successfully trapped him. They didn't kill him. They reflected him, showed him his unfulfilled self, the part he still seeks." Elise stared at her reflection in the warped glass. It shimmered unnaturally. "Why a mirror?" "Because he doesn't want to exist," Matteo said quietly. "He wants to be complete. That's why he takes only the left. Because it's missing something. Because he is missing something." They returned to the precinct at night. Elise bypassed security with Matteo in tow, descending into the old basement archives where the cobbler's locker had once been sealed. The lock had been repaired, but the door creaked open too easily. Inside, the rows of shoes were back. Only this time not just left ones. Pairs. Perfect, blood-soaked, rotten pairs. And in the center of the closet was a mirror, not Matteo's, a different one. Cracked, ancient, framed in polished bone. Elise took a step forward and froze. The mirror reflected only her, but with no feet. She looked down. Her boots were still on, but in the mirror she was barefoot, floating, hollow, incomplete. "I have to give something back," she whispered, "to break the bond." Matteo nodded. "But it has to be willingly. Something he took." She clenched her fists. He took Gabrielle, took her cousin's life, her childhood, her peace. She had nothing physical to give him back. Unless... She reached into her satchel and pulled out the photo, the one with Gabrielle and the shoe. And then, carefully, she pulled the red crayon drawing from her coat. "This was mine, wasn't it?" she said. "I made this. I don't remember when, but I did." Matteo's eyes widened. "If it came from you, and he's using it, that's a bond." She placed the drawing and the photo on the floor in front of the mirror. Then, from Matteo's hands, she took the sacred shard, the convent mirror, and held it to face the cursed one. Mirror facing mirror. Absence reflecting absence. The room seemed to groan. Walls rippled. Dust lifted into spirals. A sound like whispering wind filled the space. Footsteps. soft, dragging, lopsided. From the dark corner of the locker stepped a figure. He wore a cobbler's apron, his head tilted, his mouth stitched shut with thread. And on his feet, only one shoe, the left. Elise didn't move. She didn't scream. She held the sacred mirror high, angling it just right. The cobbler's eyes snapped up, and he looked into his reflection. And for the first time, he screamed. The sound split the air, the lights above shattered, and the cursed mirror cracked completely, splintering in a dozen directions. He stumbled, trying to look away, but Matteo was already chanting in Latin, stepping forward, driving the reflection into the void. Elise threw the photo and drawing into the center of the shattered mirror on the floor, and it swallowed them. A flash of red, a whiff of burning leather, and then silence. The shoes collapsed into dust. When Elise opened her eyes, the locker was empty. Every shoe was gone, every trace erased. Only one thing remained on the floor where the mirror had been. A pair of children's sandals, left and right, untouched, clean. Elise knelt slowly. She recognized them. Gabrielle's. She took them home that night and placed them on her mantel, not as a warning, but as a memory. She had returned what was stolen, but deep down she knew, somewhere out there, the cobbler was still missing one more shoe. The night was cold, too cold. Detective Mara Chen stood alone at the evidence vault, her breath forming fragile clouds in the stale, still air. The red shoe, ominous, glistening faintly under the flickering fluorescent bulb above, rested in the center of the evidence table, untouched since the last time it was logged and photographed. Something had shifted. Mara couldn't explain it, but the air around the vault felt thicker, heavier, the kind of pressure that wraps around your lungs, making it harder to breathe. Not due to fear, but something deeper, more primordial, as if she wasn't supposed to be here. But she had no choice. Earlier that morning, the janitor had quit, walked right out of the precinct, muttering something about red footprints on the floor of the evidence vault that led nowhere. And just an hour ago, a rookie officer, Richards, had passed out in the hallway after hearing heels tapping in the empty corridors. Everyone laughed, except Mara, because she heard it too. That same tapping, rhythmic and relentless, like a metronome to madness. Click, click, click. A beat too perfect to be human. So now she was here, facing the thing no one dared speak of anymore. The red shoe. She reached into her coat pocket, pulling out the black and white photo of the original crime scene. It was faded, crumpled at the corners. The woman, Emma Lang, lay sprawled on the tiled floor, her throat slashed, her eyes wide open in eternal panic. One shoe missing. The red one. That red shoe. The last trace of the killer who vanished into thin air 15 years ago. And now, it was back. Or rather, it had never left. Back at headquarters, Captain Deeks was going through archived case files when the lights suddenly went out. A loud metallic clang echoed from the hallway. Then, silence. A moment later, the emergency lights flickered on. Deeks blinked. Right there on his office floor, a single wet footprint. Too small to be his, too fresh to be old, too red to be a mistake. The captain's voice trembled as he picked up the phone to call Mara, but the line only rang once. Then static. Then a whisper. 1 foot. Then another. His heart nearly stopped. At the vault, Mara leaned closer to the table, her flashlight trembling slightly in her grip. She wanted to believe this was all in their heads. Just some urban legend gone wild. But the evidence disagreed. The shoe had moved. She was sure of it. She'd logged its position before stepping out earlier, had placed a yellow chalk mark beside its heel. Now, it sat beyond the mark, at least 2 inches, still facing forward, still patient. Mara whispered, "Who are you?" A chill ran down her spine. Behind her, somewhere in the dark corridor, the faint sound returned. Click, click. She turned fast, sweeping the beam of her flashlight left and right. Empty air, but the sound came again. Click. Closer now, and this time followed by a soft whisper, "Find me." Mara's knees buckled. That voice didn't come from outside the room. It came from inside the shoe. The break came unexpectedly. Back at her desk, trying to collect herself, Mara dug through Emma Lang's old belongings, now part of the victim archive. Buried among them, taped beneath the lining of a photo album, she found a key. An old storage locker key, rusted, engraved with numbers long faded. But she knew that address, a warehouse long condemned, scheduled for demolition next month, the same place where 3 bodies had been found in the mid-90s. All unsolved, all women, all missing one shoe. Her breath caught. She knew where she had to go. The warehouse stood in the shadow of time, its windows broken, its walls streaked with the tears of rust and rain. She parked her cruiser, heart pounding in her chest. She wasn't alone. Another car sat idling in the lot. Captain Deeks. He'd followed the trail too. They didn't speak, didn't need to. There was an understanding between them now. Whatever this thing was, it was hunting again. Inside, the floorboards creaked like the groans of the dead. The air stank of mildew and ancient blood. The locker was there, number 108. Mara approached, flashlight beam trembling. She fit the key. It turned with an audible click. The door creaked open. Inside, a shoebox, and inside that, another red shoe, the left one, perfectly preserved, and beneath it, a single sheet of paper, scrawled in jagged writing. When both feet are together, the dance begins. Deeks stepped back. "We need to seal this," Mara nodded. But it was too late. The warehouse door slammed shut behind them with a violent bang. Lights burst. The air turned icy. And the tapping, oh God, the tapping, filled the room like a drum line of death. Click, click, click. From the shadows emerged a figure, not fully human, not quite ghost. A woman. No face, only hair, endless black strands like seaweed in water. On her feet, 2 red shoes. She didn't walk. She floated, and she danced. Slow, spiraling steps, her feet never touching the floor, only gliding, possessed by rhythm, powered by hatred. Her voice was a rasp. "You found me." And in that moment, both Mara and Deeks saw everything. The murders, the rage, the betrayal. This was no ordinary killer. This was a spirit of vengeance, a woman buried alive for crimes she never committed, her only possessions 2 red shoes gifted by a lost lover. And now? Now she wore them forever. Now she danced forever. And all who looked upon her would never walk again. The door groaned behind Detective Lena Croft as she stepped into the cold basement of the decommissioned police precinct. Her flashlight flickered again, even though she had just replaced the batteries that morning. It was as if the darkness itself resisted being pierced. The scent was stronger down here, like mildew, iron, and something fouler, like decayed meat. Lena's breath fogged the air despite it being midsummer. She gripped her service weapon tightly, her other hand clutching the flashlight, which danced across the walls, catching broken lockers, filing cabinets, and unmarked boxes piled like coffins. She wasn't supposed to be here. The entire precinct had been shut down 3 years ago after the death of Sergeant Abel Marsh. A case gone cold like the others surrounding the red shoe. and now Lena was chasing a legend into the bowels of a building no one had stepped foot in since. A loud clunk echoed behind her. She spun around. Nothing, just her own footsteps echoing late. She exhaled, forcing calm. But that's when she saw it. The red shoe. It was there again, right in the middle of the floor, gleaming despite the dust, the same impossible shade of crimson, vibrant as fresh blood. It hadn't been there moments ago. Her grip on the flashlight tightened. She aimed her weapon at it, then slowly advanced. Every hair on her body stood up. The room felt like it was holding its breath. Just as she reached the shoe, clack! A trapdoor beneath her feet gave way. Lena fell. The world spun violently. Pain exploded in her shoulder as she hit something hard. Then, silence. She coughed, her lungs filling with dust. Her flashlight had landed a few feet away, its beam now facing upward, casting monstrous shadows on the stone walls around her. She was underground, some kind of crypt or hidden chamber beneath the precinct. Staggering to her feet, she retrieved her light. The red shoe was gone. No way back. The trapdoor had closed above her, too high to reach. There was only one direction, forward. The hallway ahead was narrow, carved from damp stone, with symbols etched into the walls, unfamiliar, jagged runes that made her skin crawl. The deeper she went, the colder it became, and then came the whispers, soft at first, disjointed. Children's voices, repeating nursery rhymes in reverse. Akuko, row, row, row your soul. Ashes, ashes, they all screamed down. Lena's heart thundered. Her light trembled in her hand. That's when she saw them. Photos. Hundreds, no, thousands, plastered to the walls of a small chamber. Each photo was of a different person, each holding the red shoe. Some were grinning, some crying, some dead. And then she saw it. Her own face, pinned in the center. A Polaroid of her from just hours ago, when she had entered the evidence room, holding the shoe. She staggered back. Footsteps. Someone else was here. She spun around and caught sight of a figure at the far end of the corridor. It moved jerkily, like it wasn't used to limbs. It wore an old officer's uniform, ripped, bloodied. A hollow, gaping maw replaced its face, and in its hand, it held the other shoe. The pair, matching. Blood began to drip from its fingertips, pooling on the floor in a red so dark it looked black. It raised one hand and pointed at her, then whispered, "You wore it. You called us." Lena ran. The tunnels twisted like a maze. She didn't know how many turns she made, only that the whispers followed her. And laughter. Terrible, hollow laughter. She burst into a circular room. At its center stood a mirror, cracked and aged, framed in rusted metal. Something about it pulled her forward. As she approached, her reflection didn't match her movements. Her mirrored self tilted its head, smiled, and lifted the red shoe in its hand. Lena stepped back. Too late. The mirror shattered outward. When she awoke, Lena was lying on the cold ground, surrounded by glass. The whispering had stopped, but so had everything else. No sound, no breeze. The chamber now looked different, older, rotten. The walls were lined with bones. A small wooden box sat beside her. Inside, the red shoe. Clean, pristine, and a note, in the same handwriting as her own. "You found it. Now it's yours. Pass it on, or rot." She backed away, but the shoe moved on its own. Closer, closer, crawling like a spider. Lena screamed as it touched her skin. Her eyes turned red, and far away, a girl in another city opened her mailbox and found a package with no return address. Inside was a red shoe, and a whisper that echoed only in her mind. Try it on. It fits. The warehouse was silent except for the fluttering of moths against the old light fixtures and the echo of Chloe's breathing. Shallow, raspy, uncertain. The red shoe gleamed unnaturally in the beam of her flashlight. Its leather, though cracked and faded, seemed almost to pulse in the dark. She had come back alone, not by choice, but necessity. Tyler was gone. The last time she saw him, he was chasing a noise behind the police storage facility, muttering that something was calling to him. Then, silence. Only the shoe remained, placed at the threshold of the evidence room as if waiting. Chloe stepped inside. The air was thick, not just dusty or old, but heavy, like grief had taken physical form. She turned on her recorder. Detective Chloe Myers, July 30th, 11:46 p.m. Location, District 7 Evidence Warehouse. Subject, unsolved. Item number 723, red leather shoe. Suspected, cursed object. A creak. To her left. She jerked the flashlight and caught only rows of covered boxes. A scuttling, rat-like sound followed. Toot. Then a sudden breeze rushed past her, carrying a voice, faint and childlike. I only wanted to dance. She spun around. No one. And then, click. Her flashlight died. Chloe fumbled for her phone. The screen lit up, and she saw it. In the middle of the room, a figure, slender, moving in jagged rhythm. A man dressed in a tattered 1930s suit, face half burned, eyes missing, but still seeing. On his feet, 2 red shoes. You took them, he rasped. They weren't yours to keep. Chloe froze. Her lips moved. Who are you? He tilted his head. Once, I was a dancer, then a murderer, now a memory that bleeds. The room blurred, spinning with flickering images, ballrooms, bloodstains, flashes of screaming faces. A woman with crimson heels crushed beneath a chandelier. A child holding his mother's lifeless hand. Chloe's knees buckled. The red shoes glowed. You wore them, he whispered, and now you must dance. Suddenly her body jerked upward. Not of her will, her legs, stiff, rigid, moved forward. Then, side to side. A waltz. A silent, spectral melody filled the air. She fought, screaming inside her mind. But her limbs belonged to something else now. Something older. Something that fed on rhythm and remorse. From the shadows emerged others. Figures with missing faces, distorted limbs. All dancers. All prisoners. Her mouth opened on its own. A voice, not hers, spoke. I offer myself one final step. Let the curse end. The red shoes burned. Smoke hissed from the soles. Her legs twisted violently, then stopped. The room fell silent again. When dawn came, officers found Chloe unconscious in the center of the room. On her feet, 1 red shoe, the other missing. 3 months later, a new recruit to the precinct was rummaging through unsorted boxes in the basement when he found it. A red shoe. Just one. Smiling to himself, he picked it up. Must be from some old case. He placed it on a nearby shelf, and as he turned his back, in the faint hum of the basement light came the softest whisper, Do you hear the music?